Welcome to the Final Word podcast. I am your host, Otis Moss III, and I'm delighted that I have two incredible ministers and social justice warriors. This is Hatch to the Second Power. We've got none other than Marshall Hatch, Senior and Junior, with us today. They serve on the west side of Chicago at the Pilgrim Baptist Church, the Mount Pilgrim Baptist Church, where they're doing incredible work around returning citizens and redeeming individuals who have been cast aside in society. Since we arrived in Chicago, I have admired Pastor Hatch and his work from the moment I set foot on the northern shore known as Chicago, Illinois. And it is a delight to have both of you here for the Final Word podcast. Wow. Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, my first question is this for you, Dr. Hatch. Who was your inspiration in ministry?
Dr. Martin Luther King. Enough. I was 10 years old when he was assassinated, and even then I, felt, that this was a major prophetic moment, the replaying of the mountaintop, and so, and like many people of my generation, that was one of the real role models in ministry. And of course my dad was a pastor for 41 years at Shallow Baptist Church. And so those were kind of my major role models.
Now, you have truly placed your stake in the social justice realm. The work that you and your son do on the West Side has been transformative. Many of our churches are in the, how should I put it, they're in the praise section, but not in the prophetic section, not knowing that there is a cross of intersection. What was the inspiration of saying we're going to make sure that we build out a ministry that is connected to social justice?
I can't wait to hear how Marshall responds to that. For me personally, though, my call to ministry, I was in graduate school at Georgetown University. My dad had just passed, and so I was only son, and I was thinking, okay, I don't have to worry about being a preacher now. That's over. He's gone. And so, the pressure of being the only son that needs to go into ministry, that seemed to be something I could put in my rear view until I went back to Washington in my little one-room apartment, and God literally arrested me that whole semester. And the wonder of it all is everything I'm doing now is what I saw when I was 23 years old. That was 1981. This kind of ministry, to do it on the West Side, because everybody, when you're from the West Side, you got the West Side chip on your shoulder, and you just feel like, you never meet a West Sider who just simply says, I'm from Chicago. I'm from the West Side.
That's true. That's true. That's true.
So, that's true. I came back to do it in the space that we're in now. It's been an incredible journey.
Now, MJ, tell me.
I would start with your dad, Elijah J. Hatch, who I believe moved up to Chicago from Aberdeen, Mississippi, during what we know as the Great Migration, and he was invited by his older sister, Mary Pullen, who was born 1901, passed 2010, I believe. And so growing up, sitting at her feet, listening to the jewels of family history, old tradition, this deep sense of connectedness to not just the past, but, purpose. And of course, coming from a family of ministers and activists and teachers, I didn't have to think much about who I would become. I actually went to Bates College, and I'm sure Benjamin Elijah.
Yes, indeed.
So it's what drew me to Bates, actually, hearing him talk about how instrumental Ben Mays was in the civil rights era. And I remember picking up his autobiography my freshman year, Born to Rebel.
Yes.
And listening to, reading his words, but also listening to his voice. My education did not emancipate me. It did the far greater service of allowing me to emancipate myself, to prove to myself my own dignity and my own worth. And so starting to see myself even in his story, but in our great tradition, is what drew me to the kind of ministry that we're doing now.
Now, I want to ask you, being a PK is a unique and peculiar, quote unquote, vocation. Having the love and the care of your parents, at the same time wanted to differentiate yourself in terms of being who you are.
Right.
Having the name of your father, and then people saying, "Oh, you're Marshall Hatch's son, but you want to be your own."
Yeah.
How have you worked through finding your own voice?
I would say understanding that his voice is not the voice of God's. And I think that was early 20s for me, wrestling with my own call. And for a long stretch, I was Jonah, running from it exactly for that reason. I wanted to be my own man, make my own way. But of course, the same God that called you in 1981 is the same God who arrested my spirit. And that's what's kind of led to this ministry that we're engaging in now.
Now, you all have moved to a different point in ministry as father and son, and I could say this as a PK also. There is a point in which the father moves from father to friend and then becomes a student from their son. When was that moment for you?
I don't know if it's a moment as much as it has been a season and a continuous one. Probably the only reason why I think I have had some longevity in terms of relevance in ministry is because of my children. Because at some point I started following them. I guess, it's like they were in school and traveling, and every time they moved to a different part of the world, I made it my business to go and visit them. That's how I got to see the world, following them around. And so, yeah, at some point, you do begin to follow them, and that's what has kept me, I think, with a certain relevance and freshness in ministry, is because, my children have basically, at some point, it means a lot what they think of me. so I find myself undergoing transformations just so that, they will, at some, be proud of me.
One of my favorite producers and musicians, artists, is a person by the name of Jay Dilla. Jay Dilla, who produced Common, The Roots, D'Angelo. He's part of that Soulquarians movement in 2000. And Dilla comes out of the church. Was a musician in the church and does some very unique things. And I use Dilla as an example because I think the DJ and the preacher are very similar. And you all did something, you did a remix today. And a remix on several levels. There is, what I love about your preaching is that there is a deep care for the theological historical depth. And then there's a deep care for the cultural aspect of Black organic theological framework. You did that just beautifully. And the two of you all did it together. People just would say, "Oh, that's a hoop." No, that's an African-inspired communicational style that goes back, hundreds of years. That has, a double entendre. When did you all move into the space where you all could literally mix together when you're preaching?
You want to tackle that first?
I think you should.
I would, like today, I was tired. And I turned to him and I said, "Would you bail me out?" And he has an incredible voice.
Beautiful voice, yes.
And so, but at some point, it does become like a teamwork, and understanding the imagery of that and what that does for our people, the Father and the Son, the kind of encouragement and inspiration people have watching a father and a son, even in ministry, work together. A large part of our ministry with young men in particular, but young women as well, is our interaction. And you begin to see young Black fathers, they start modeling that, and that becomes informally a major part of our ministry, you know, and which is why we call it Maafa Redemption Project. It's not a program, but it's a redemption project, and so some of that is just very intentional on my part.
I think it's the intergenerational magic that's so part and parcel of our tradition. It's call and response. Last night, me and my wife went to see Ain't Too Proud to Beg, which is a Broadway-style play on the Temptations. 75% of the crowd were white, but that 25% singing along.
Yes, yes, yes,
like
yes.
church
It felt like
with
Yes.
that 25%. And I think part of, handing the mic and me handing it back, that intergenerational call and response is so mystical. It's a mystical chord that I love to pluck because it feels so transcendental.
Now, you know, one of my highlights, you know, being around your dad and you all's relationship, you know. And I remember I started saying it as if I said it when he started preaching, but I really got it from your dad. And so I'd introduce him and I'd say, you know, watch his mother there because, you know, when I preach, she smiles, but when he preaches, she shouts. Your dad said that.
That's right. Pop says that. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Now, have you all thought about doing some writing that would speak about the intergenerational, that would speak the way that you all mix together? And I think that's the apt metaphor, mixing or cooking together.
That can happen whenever you mentor him and get him the kind of discipline that he needs, you know, to do that.
The father's coming out. The father's coming out now.
I feel it and I receive it.
Okay.
I receive
Yeah,
it.
we need to do that.
I think it would be really powerful. There are a lot of models of fathers and sons, fathers and daughters, mothers and daughters in ministry, but unhealthy models where there was a force to you need to do this and a very authoritarian model. There hasn't been a many models where there is this kind of mixing of connecting. For example, though they had a good relationship on one level, Dr. King and Daddy King. Daddy King was like, no, you're going to do it this way. And Dr. King really went in another direction. He did not want him to do the work that he was doing originally in the Civil Rights Movement because he was afraid for his son.
That's right.
You know, he was just simply afraid for his son.
On the way over here, we tune in to Abyssinian live.
Okay.
Guess who was preaching? Otis Moss Jr.
He was.
And we're listening to him all the way up into the parking lot.
Wow.
That's right.
And he tells one of those stories about Daddy King and Martin, and Daddy King wanting Martin to not go back to
That's right.
Montgomery, and
That's
Ben
right.
Mays in the meeting and said he's right. And so, you know, I told a few of the people that we're talking, I said, you know, pastor's father was at Abyssinian today. I said, which explains why the pastor called me. His dad. I said, we found him out. The dad was busy today. He had a prayer engagement.
Oh, well, the Lord certainly laid on your heart a message that was needed. And you all did an absolutely beautiful job. And the work that you all are doing on the West Side and nationally, the Maafa Redemption Project. Share a little bit about that, because there's been a film that has talked about the work that you're doing. There's been a variety of articles, not only locally, but nationally, about the kind of work. Let the audience know what you all are doing and how it's rooted.
I follow Marshall on that.
Yeah, so you talked about the stained glass work that has been a part of our ministry, in that it's converting an old Catholic space. So this is the St. Mel Holy Ghost Parish, one of the largest Irish Catholic parishes in the city in the 1940s in West Garfield Park. We acquired the space in 1993, and by that time the space was already abandoned for 5 years. And so these beautiful rose windows, each of them 25 feet in diameter. They were falling in. And over time, in order to make the space feel like home, transition out those Eurocentric conceptions of Jesus and put in the Black Messiah. And one of those pieces is the Maafa Remembrance Window. It's of a Black Messiah whose torso is the Brooks slave ship schematic, which was produced by British abolitionists, I believe in 1789 in Plymouth, to expose the horrors of the transatlantic slave trade or the Middle Passage. But the Maafa, right? Marimba Ani, I believe, was the first to coin the Maafa, that phrase, and let the circle be unbroken. Understanding that experience as the Maafa is what gives language to the ineffable. To make, what did it feel like to be at the bottom of that ship? What does it feel like to be a 17 or 18 young man in West Garfield Park, and it feels like all of your live options are no more? What does that feel like? Similar experience, which is why we coined the project the Maafa Redemption Project. So what does it look like to redeem this history? Well, you have to start with the new generation. And so we just graduated our 7th cohort of young men, ages 18 to 35. It's housing, workforce development, mental health support. But the core of it is, the lifeblood of it is those relationships between the deacons, the ministers, and these young men. And so we're delighted. So now we have a similar sister program for young women named Beautiful Seed. And it's really become recreating the spirit of village in the heart of the city. And we're all doing similar work. So we're familiar with the Mani Village. Part of what we're building in West Garfield Park is called the Sankofa Wellness Village, for interrelated capital projects. The anchor of the village is a 60,000 square foot wellness center with partners like Rush University Medical Center and Erie and YMCA. So really creating space again for Black folk to move back. We understand this phenomenon of the reverse Great Migration, right?
Yes.
Or the Black Exodus. And in West Garfield Park, since 1980, 52% of West Garfield Park, Black West Garfield Park residents have moved out. So what we're trying to do is create space for them to Sankofa back to West Garfield Park and other neighborhoods.
I love that. There is a need in ministry now, just what you were speaking about, the idea of Sankofa, to reframe the Christian story back to the South, the global South. Back to Africa.
That's good.
Return it to spaces of color, and return a theological narrative, not as we are, Johnny-come-latelys to the tradition, but that we begin. And I hope that people who are listening will have the opportunity to explore the work that you're doing. We'll have the opportunity to read some of the people that you have been exploring to build your project. And I want to ask this question. If you were to give 2 recommendations of books that you are reading right now, what 2 books would you suggest to the audience that's impacting you right now? That'd be historical, like these are the greatest books I read, but just right now, what 2 books? I want both of you to just give a recommendation.
Always Howard Thurman, Jesus and the Disinherited. It's the transformative Christology, Jesus of Nazareth, to disabuse you of Jesus of Norway. And so it is a great small power-packed piece that, of course, most people are familiar with. But just it's the book Dr. King had in his briefcase when he was assassinated.
Yes.
And I can understand it because I go back again and again to what does it mean to survive at the bottom of the empire with one's soul intact. The hellhounds of fear,
Yes.
hatred,
Yes.
and what was the third one?
Fear, hatred, deception.
Deception. And so that, and then, I tell you one that I've been using in my class over and over again is Raphael Warnock's
Oh, The Divided Mind?
Divided Mind, Black Church. It's probably the best sort of shortcut through the literature of black church, the evolution of black church,
Mm-hmm.
the history, and then the theological
Mm-hmm.
and hermeneutical
Mm-hmm.
lens. But just it takes you through the shortcut, gives you those sort of 4 then 5
Yes.
movements
Yes.
on which to sort of process the evolution of black church and where we might be today.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd recommend those 2.
Okay.
I would start with Octavia Butler's Parable of the Sower,
Come on.
which is actually based in 2024
Mm-hmm.
and 2025. And you can certainly tell that she was a prophetess and, of course, the mother of Afrofuturism.
Mm-hmm.
But I think her words are ringing true now
Mm.
in our current cultural and political and spiritual context. I think the second book is probably Prophet of Freedom,
Mm-hmm.
about Frederick Douglass, and it's because we listened to a podcast about him on a road trip not long ago, and we were reminded just how he's a founding father
Absolutely.
in terms of this renewed vision of what America could be. And of course, this critical election, presidential election in 2024, I think his words can teach us a lot about who we want to be, who we decide to be as African Americans or Africans in America.
Yeah, it's probably the best treatment of Douglass of any
Absolutely.
book that the Prophet of Freedom does. David Blight, Yale
That's right.
scholar, tremendous job. He worked, was it 20-something years trying to
Yeah,
put that together?
That's right.
And he says he still didn't get everything that he wanted in there.
That's right.
We were recently in Dublin this past summer, and what was fascinating was what I was reading in there about how people appreciated Frederick Douglass in Ireland, also in Scotland and other parts of what is the United Kingdom. That Ireland is not. They want to make it very clear. But it's a powerful piece, and I would encourage any preacher to read that one if they want to get a sense of the history of the impact of Douglass.
So we did the film circuit, you know, with the All These Sons piece, and we were in Dublin
Uh-huh.
at this place. It showed that showed the film,
Mhm.
and it was a friend's house, you know, Quakers.
Mm-hmm.
We look above us. There's a plaque. Frederick Douglass spoke here,
Wow.
1845.
Wow. Wow.
You know, that global perspective that, you know,
Yeah.
we often don't fully appreciate.
Mhm.
You know, that what I was trying to talk a little bit about today, how we are really a part of that 2/3
Mhm.
world. That's how we are viewed around the world.
Yes.
Until we started having black secretaries of state and UN ambassadors, which I think that was very intentional to confuse the globe.
That is a great perspective. You know how that colonized our mind and imagination with black faces in high places doesn't
The rest of the
necessarily
planet is clear on who we were.
right.
And so when they took hostages, they would let the black ones go until we got black secretaries of
The state.
and
Come on.
UN ambassadors.
Yeah, that's
Department of Defense secretaries.
Right. Oh, I love that perspective. Let me ask this final question for you, both of you. If there was a song that would encapsulate your ministry and who you are, or a band that would encapsulate your ministry and who you are, what would that song be? What would that band be? Or maybe it's a combination of several things. But what would it be?
You gotta go first.
Oh man, the chairman of our deacon board, Deacon Billy Carson. He's from Canton, right, Mississippi?
Yeah, Mississippi.
Walk with me, Lord. Is his favorite song. Walk with me. Walk with me, Lord. Walk with me while I'm on this tedious journey. Sometimes it's tedious journey.
Teach us.
I want Jesus, Jesus, Jesus to walk. That's my testimony every day. I need him to walk with me. This tedious journey.
I love it. Yes.
And I'm embarrassed. Because all I ever think about is Frankie Beverly.
Come on. Speak it.
That,
Speak it. We're black. There is no sacred and secular separation.
At all.
Yeah. The incredible contribution. That was the one concert my wife and I went to the most. We might have saw him 6 or 7 times. After he really couldn't sing anymore. He just be mouthing the words. You know, the band would be real loud. But we already knew the words, and we already knew to wear white, so it didn't matter. But the ways that music helped to create this communal sense of celebration in the last 50 years in black community. You know, somebody's gonna have to do the academic work.
That's right.
To really talk about the contribution of that band, which, you know, was an extension of Marvin Gaye.
Right, exactly.
He discovered him, he named him, and Frankie, you know, Silky Soul Singer,
Right.
is about Marvin Gaye.
That's
Right.
And so, what gets me ready for my sermons is playing Frankie Beverly and Mays, which I played this morning, by the way.
So which song would it be? Is it We Are One?
Golden
Is
time of day.
But today it was Reasons.
Okay.
You gave me a reason to love again. And then, you know, I thought about your mama. Thank you, baby. I was ready to preach after that.
I love it. I love it. Well, I want to thank both of you for one, taking time today to be a part of this interview, joining us over here at Trinity. We are such lovers of your work and respect your ministry, and we're just grateful that we have a relationship with your ministry and that we look forward to doing some more holy mischief together in the future. And we thank everybody for joining us for this Final Word podcast, and be on the lookout for other interviews that we will have in the future. But until then, remember the reasons, and also remember to have Jesus to walk with you. Peace.